Hi friends, welcome to the tutorial for this cute little blueberry. If you are interested in written PDF instructions, you can find them on our Etsy. Jumping right in, to get started, you'll need chunky blue yarn, white for the eyes, black for the eyes, or you can use a thinner black yarn, pink for blush, scissors, row markers, an optional lighter if you're using the fuse method, optional darning needle, an optional yarn fluffer, and polyfill. So we're going to start by taking our body color and creating a slip knot, leaving a 8-inch tail. I like to make this awareness ribbon shape with my tail on the bottom and working yarn on top, and then I move the working yarn underneath that loop, and then I pull the working yarn through that loop, and then I hold the tail in the working yarn and pull that tight, and that will create your slip knot. And you want all of your loops for the project to be about 1 inch or 1 finger wide unless I tell you otherwise. Row 1, you're going to chain on a total of 13 loops, including the slip knot, so the slip knot becomes loop number 1. To make a chain, you're just going to take your working yarn, and from behind, you're going to pull up new loops from the previous loop. So again, we started with 1 loop already up, and then we're going to cast on or chain an additional 12 loops. So this is loop 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Once we have all 13 loops up, we are going to now make this into a circle. So you want to take your working yarn and your tail yarn and point those away from you. And then with your working yarn on top of your tail, you're going to pull your tail through loop number 12 of the chain. So that will be underneath loop 13. And then just pull your tail until you have a closed circle. Loop number 13 will now become loop 1 of row 2. And I recommend using a row marker just to mark the first loop of every row to help you keep track if you prefer not to count your loops. For row 2, with that loop already started, you're going to knit 11 new loops through the top row of the chain, and that will give you a total of 12 loops. Once you've pulled up all 12 loops of row 2, we are going to move on to rows 3 through 11, where we will knit 12 for each row. So you can either mark your first loop of each row for 9 rows, or you can count your loops and it will be 108. I'm going to speed up the video here, so if you'd like to follow along, make sure you pause. Once you've completed row 11, it should look like this, and we're going to trim our working yarn, leaving an 8 to 10 inch tail, and we're going to close off either side of the project. I'm going to start by closing off the side I was just working on, so you'll just take your tail and pull it through your remaining loops from inside to outside, and once you get to the end, you will pull tight. After you've pulled your tail through all 12 loops, you're going to pull this tight, and once that is pulled tight, You're going to tie the tail to a nearby loop. You're going to double knot your tail near the base of the project, and then you will tuck in the knot and excess tail. I prefer to tuck in the knot and excess tail after I have closed off the other side. And before stuffing, I do recommend just kind of stretching out your loops on the inside of your project. And now it's time to fill the side that you did not close off yet. I prefer to fill up my blueberry as much as I can, so you might need to fill it up and then take some out when you close it off and then fill it back up once you are halfway closed off. I did go ahead and remove about a quarter of my stuffing just so I can close off a little bit easier. And you're going to close off just like the other side, but instead of loops, you're going to go through the chain that you started with. So I'm going to take that tail yarn and pull from the inside to outside. And when closing off this side of the project, I like to just pull tight as I go, just to make it a little bit easier to pull the tail tight at the end. And once you have it halfway closed off, you'll just go ahead and add the extra stuffing and continue to close off. Once you've pulled that tight, you'll secure the same ways, so you will tie to a nearby loop, double knot near the base, and tuck it inside of the project. You can use the end of your scissors just to make pushing it in a little bit easier. And once this side was done, I did go ahead and tuck in the tail and knot from the other side. Now you'll want to take 4 row markers, and we're going to mark in between every 3 columns towards the top where we closed off. So you'll place one marker and then count 3 columns over and place another marker. And then we're going to want to actually move these closer to the top. You want about 3 inches of space between each marker. It may be tricky to find the loops in the columns when you get closer to where you closed off, but just try to make these all on the same row as best as you can. So before moving on, your row markers should look something like this. So starting in a column before our stitch marker, so we're going to count 1 column behind our stitch marker. We're going to pull up 1 loop and we're going to leave about a 3-inch tail. And then after we pull up that loop, we're going to knit 1 through that loop. And now we're going to hold that loop and we're going to pull the tail tight just to secure that first loop. So now you want to continue holding on to that previous loop, and we're going to move over 1 column, so the first column where you marked, and we're going to pull up a new loop about 2 fingers wide. Then you want to knit those together, so we'll hold both of those, pull a loop through both of them. Now you'll want to continue holding on to this loop, and we're going to pull up a loop in the same space that we did previously. We'll knit those together again, and then we'll repeat that step again. So we'll pull a new loop through the exact same space, and then we'll knit together. And next you're going to move to the next column, and right here we're just going to do a slip stitch. So we're going to pull up a new loop, and you're going to take that loop and pull it through your previous loop, so that loop that you were holding. And then we're going to do another slip stitch the next column over. So you'll pull up a new loop and pull that through your previous loop. And after that, you should have completed the first scallop on the top of your blueberry. So to create 3 more, we're going to follow all of the same steps. So holding on to that previous loop, we're going to pull up a new loop in that column that we have marked and knit those 2 together, and then pull up again in that same space, knit together, and one last time in that same space and knit together. And then we're going to slip stitch 1 column over and 1 column over. We will do another slip stitch. And then where we did that row marker, we're just going to knit 2 together 3 times, just like our previous 2 scallops. So you'll just want to continue these steps until you have 4 scallops on the top of your blueberry. And once you've made your 4th scallop, instead of doing 2 slip stitches, we're only going to do 1. So again, after that 4th scallop, we're only going to do 1 slip stitch. And after we've done that, you're going to cut your working yarn, leaving a 3-inch tail. You will then take your tail and you're going to pull it right under your starting tail through that loop. And then you will take it and pull it through your last remaining loop. Then you'll pull it back through that previous space, meeting your starting tail, and pull tight to close off that last loop. And after you pull this tight, you're going to tie both of your tails in a double knot. And once those are tied, you're going to take the knot and the tails and tuck those inside of the project. And this is what the final scallop should look like. Now we're going to move on to the face. So to do this, you're going to want to start off by marking your center columns. I do recommend making the center column in between 2 of the scallops on the top. Next, you'll want to mark where you want the eyes. I like to make these about 1.5 columns away from that center marker. And you just want to make sure that these are on the same row. Once you have those marked where you want, you're going to cut 2 pieces of white yarn at about 6 inches long. Then, finding those markers, you're going to pull that white yarn underneath 1 or 2 stitches. And once you've done that, you're going to tie them in a double knot, and then you'll take this and then you will tuck it inside of the project. I want my eyes to be just a little bit bigger, so I'm just going to adjust that to my preference. And then you will repeat this on the other side where you have the other row marker. If you are wanting to use chunky black yarn, you can go ahead and follow the exact same steps, just next to the white in the same spaces. Or you can use a thinner black yarn like I'm going to show here. I'm going to cut 2 pieces at about 2 feet long. And then I'm just going to take that thinner black yarn and pull it through the same 2 spaces as the white yarn. And here I'm actually going to go just 1 row lower, so when I'm ready to tie the knots, it's just a little bit easier to tuck them in. So again, using my darning needle, I'm going to go through on the inside of the white, and I'm going to pull this through those same spaces about 3 times. So I'll bring it back through the bottom and out from the top. Pull that tight, bringing it on the inside of the white, and then just adjust that. And then again, back through the bottom and out through the top. And we will do this one last time. And you want to just to keep adjusting the black yarn. And then in this video, I will show you how to do just a little added eyelash effect. So we're going to go a half a column over and 1 row down. We're going to pull the yarn through that space and back through the top. And then we're going to take the working yarn and pull it back through the bottom space. And then because I went 1 row down just to help me tie the knot, I'm just going to pull through that. And then before tying, I'll just adjust the eye, and then I will tie the tails in a double knot. And then I'm going to trim both of these tails down just a little bit shorter, and then I'm going to tuck them inside of the project. Feel free to adjust it if it needs it. And there is our finished eye, so we can go ahead and repeat all of these same steps on the other side. And here are the finished eyes. Next, we're going to move on to the mouth, so we're going to use that thin black yarn again. You want a piece about 18 inches long. And then we're just going to take this and we're going to pull it through horizontally, just half a column away from the eyes. So I'm going to do it in the same row that I have the bottom of the eyes. I'm just going to use my darning needle to push that through, meeting the other side, again half a column away from the eyes. I'm going to leave about a 3-inch tail on one side. And then I'm going to take the working yarn and pull it through that second space that I came out of. And then we're going to find that center column that we have marked off and move 2 rows down, and that is where we're going to pull the yarn out of. Once we've done that, you want to take the working yarn and just loop it around that horizontal piece now. And then you want to go through that same center space on the bottom. And then you bring that back out through the second space that we pulled out through, meeting our initial tail. And then you just want to adjust the mouth to your preference. Once you have it adjusted, you can take those tails and tie them in a double knot and tuck them inside of the project. And here is the final mouth. Lastly, we need to add the blush, so you're going to take your pink yarn and cut 2 pieces at about 6 inches long. You'll take one of those pieces, and then just under the eye, we're going to find 2 stitches, and we're going to pull through horizontally. Here I did directly in the same space as the bottom of the eye, and then 1 column over. So I'm just going to do the same thing for this project. So I'll go underneath the eye in that same space and pull it over 1 column in the same row. And once I have that pulled through, I'm just going to tie it in a double knot. And then I'm going to tuck in the double knot and excess yarn. And then I will just adjust that to my preference. Repeat this for the other side. Once you finish the blush, your project is done. I hope that you enjoyed this, and if you'd like this pattern, go check out our Etsy page. We have a bunch of other patterns that you might love. And make sure you're following us on social media so you can be the first to hear about our new patterns and possibly be chosen for a pattern tester. If you share any pictures on social media, be sure to tag us.